Hey, friends, welcome into a new edition of a podcast here in the SHN Sports Association. We call this Broadcast Theory. I'm Rob Hipp alongside our Director of Broadcasting, Karl Schoening at SHN Sports. Karl, good to see you. How you doing today, man?
Oh, I am happy it is Monday because this was opening weekend for the NCAA. I had a softball tournament I was producing. I was producing baseball games. I think I got in around 50,000 steps this weekend between Thursday through Sunday. So my calves and knees are not particularly happy with me, but I'm happy that it's finally Monday.
Hey, well, excited, man. Things are rocking and rolling. Winter sports coming to an end, and now spring sports getting well underway. And we're excited. We launched the SHN Sports Broadcast Association just a couple of weeks ago, already receiving a tremendous amount of feedback. It's growing, and we want to invite you, as always, to be a part of it. You can go to shnsports.com to learn more and get connected to resources you need, whether you're a seasoned veteran or you're new to the industry or want to get into the industry. And it's kind of what we talk about here on Broadcast Theory. And what a better way to lead in today than, well, baseball getting underway, Karl, a sport that you've had a lot of knowledge about, that you've called a lot of games. I've had some good feedback that I want to share today as well, some things you shouldn't do on a baseball broadcast. But, Karl, get us started, man. Let's start Broadcast Theory, a little baseball to get going today.
Yeah. Happy baseball season to any of the NCAA or high school broadcasters are getting rolling. Professional broadcasting or professional baseball will be getting going around, I'd say, March 31st is what I believe our business partner Mike Capps told me he was going to get rolling on. He's been the voice of the Express since they started in the year 2000. So, yeah, we'll obviously have a little bit of Mike Capps talking about the actual ins and outs of play-by-play for baseball on the SHN Sports Association with you a little later, Rob. But yeah, I've been doing baseball play-by-play and live streaming since 2009 when I was in high school. So baseball is the sport that I have easily, without doubt, done the most games of because there are so many. It is a grind. I think I am on schedule to do 33 home baseball games for UTSA this season. So knocked out 3 this weekend. I was actually just doing the production because UTSA needed me to do the production through SHN Sports. So Division I baseball production is something that SHN Sports can do, and we can teach you how to do as part of our association. But yeah, man, I'm excited about baseball season's finally starting up because it's I think we can get like 4 or 5 games in a week. There's double headers. You're out at the baseball field all day, and as you probably noticed there on when I was expanded, if you haven't noticed already, I'm very sunburnt because it's a lot of walking. So yeah, softball, baseball season, the diamond sports as we call them, just finally here, and they are the most laid back broadcasts because I think for football and basketball, you have to be pretty hyper focused. And I'm not saying you don't have to pay attention to baseball, but there's a lot of dead air to fill when it comes to baseball. So it's like, oh, here's the pitch, that's a strike. And then you wait 10, 12, 20 seconds sometimes before the next actual pitch. So, football's sort of like that, but you got to stay focused on football, and that, time between plays is really a good chance for your color analyst to come in and say something or interpret the rules. Baseball, it's just sort of like, well, that was a strike, and there's no real interpretation to be involved. So, there's a lot that goes into it, but I certainly do enjoy the on-air and the behind-the-scenes aspects of the diamond sports.
Yeah, and there's a lot of do's that you do in baseball broadcasting. Karl, I'll let you go over some of those. Maybe let's look at it from an approach of a radio side first, and then if you're calling it with a video stream, because many broadcasters, of course, they're not on air, they're not on video, they're there on the radio, but I don't want to leave out guys that are on the TV side. So give us a few do's on the radio side, what you do when you call a baseball game on the radio, and then what you do when you call a baseball game on television or on a video stream, and then I'll have a little bit of fun giving you some of the do-nots.
Yeah, well, let's start with the crossover there, right? The do for softball, baseball, etc. is to do your own score, right? Because the scorebook that you keep is more or less for you to know what happened, when happened, who's coming up next to bat, etc. So I always, as soon as I can get the lineups, and then I write down the lineups, and then we have a scorebook that allows us to know who did what when. And it's always frustrating. Every year you're going to have it where they in baseball and softball call it batting around, where you get back to the top of the lineup that started an inning, right? So if the third batter started an inning and then they come back in the same inning to the plate, then you're going to have to figure out how to be creative on your score sheet. So you have to figure out your own way to score. They're hieroglyphics to everybody else except you most of the time as the broadcaster. But if you're not keeping score in the diamond sports, you're setting yourself up for failure. So that doesn't matter if you're on radio or TV. But when you're on radio, you have to be a bit more descriptive. But the play-by-play actually, and again, keep an eye out for Mike Capps, who's been doing this for over 20 years, so he has a lot more experience than me. It's more or less the same. You can kind of back off the description in basketball and football, but in baseball and softball, I don't think it really changes that much. And that's probably a good thing for everything that comes out, but you can also sit back and not talk in radio or in TV as opposed to radio where you have to describe every pitch. When you have a visual representation of what happened on a pitch, you can allow your color analysts to speak a lot more. And that kind of translates to both all the other sports when you have a visual aid. But in baseball, when you're on the radio, you have to describe every pitch as well as you can. TV, yeah, you can just back up, let the pitch miss low and away for a ball, and you don't have to say pitch misses low and away for a ball. So I would say that's probably the main difference is you don't have to be as on top of the action when you're talking about baseball and softball play-by-play when you're going from radio to TV.
We'll have more in depth later this week with Mike Capps. He is a partner at SHN Sports, our director of education, also a minor league baseball broadcaster. Also, he's done quite a bit in the MLB as well. He'll really dig into it. I did want to give you one do not, though. And Karl, someone that you know very well, a gentleman by the name of Bill Schoening, called me on this, and I appreciate his candid feedback because that's the first thing. You got to be teachable in this industry. Don't go in with this attitude that you know everything, that you're the greatest that ever was, because let's be honest, you're not. None of us are. Vince Scully was the greatest, if you want to look at it that way. But we've got an opportunity to paint a picture and describe games and relay a story. It's never about us as broadcasters. It is always about the teams and the athletes that we cover in their stories. Well, you know me, Karl. I like to get a little bit excited, and I think sometimes, in fact, I don't think, I know, I go over the top. And Bill Schoening called me out on this with the baseball broadcast, and it was some new things. I was learning some nuances and some things that I had to really dig into. Don't get excited when it's the first strike or even the second strike. I was going, oh, it's 0-2. And Bill said, hey, Rob, I got some good feedback. You're doing a good job on the broadcasting, but here's some things that you're not doing a good job of. Don't go over the top. Don't get excited. Baseball is one of these sports that is very casual. Think of it if you're there with your family and you're eating a hot dog, chewing on some popcorn, whatever you're doing, drinking a Coke, very laid back, have fun, but don't go over the top. And Karl, that was the best advice that I've got so far on a baseball broadcast is don't get so excited on simple things. Wait for the big plays. And even then, don't go over the top. Don't scream into the microphone. I see this a lot with a lot of new young broadcasters, especially that, maybe you're trying to make a name for yourself, and that's okay. You do have to make a name for yourself in the industry, but you don't have to scream. People don't want to hear that. What may sound exciting to you doesn't come across as exciting to people on the other end. In fact, they probably take their headphones off if they're listening, and they may never listen again because they're just like, that's too much excitement. So tone it down a notch. Don't get excited on an 0-1 or an 0-2. It's not that big of a deal. That's the best advice that I got on a don't of baseball broadcasting, Karl.
Yeah, I always tell people, especially when they're starting out, it comes down to have authority in your voice, right? You know what is happening, so relay that in your voice with a tone of authority. I almost say, and Rob, you have a young one, but you're not quite at the age where you have to tell them what to do. But think about it as like sort of a parenting voice in a way. You are sort of projecting your voice, obviously. You're not yelling. You don't want to ever yell in a broadcast, really. But you're projecting a sense of authority. So, instead of like, oh, strike one, you say strike one. Right, that's it. Just like almost like that's it, strike one. And that's I think that's fine, but if you get really excited maybe on the big game-winning walk-off or whatever, but I would say if you think about if you're a broadcaster that's done other sports, basketball when there's a huge dunk, you can dial it up to a 10. Football, when there's a great play that you see on the field, who knows what it might be, usually results in a touchdown with a big stiff arm, you can probably dial it up to a 10. But in baseball, I would say even on a game-winning double that scores 2 runs, you probably need to keep it at around an 8, if that makes sense. And I'm trying to explain that, and I think if you are an experienced broadcaster, you might understand it. Baseball is a sport where dialing it up to a 10 is not exactly the best way to do it. You could probably, if you pull it off and it really is like a game-winning grand slam for a team that scored 6 runs in that inning, or maybe 6 runs over the last 2 innings to have a big comeback. Yeah, that's a huge play. It's an exciting, and maybe that's an exception to dial it up to a 10 because you don't believe what you just saw. But even then, just keep that authority and excitement level at an 8, at the biggest play. And then really, when you're just rolling through the game and it's the middle of the 3rd inning and it's a 1-1 ball game and there's a runner on second, here's a base hit, keep it at around a 6 or 7 on your excitement for the base hit that brings in a run. I don't know how to really say it other than listen to other professionals. That's the best way to get better. And you'll notice that not many baseball broadcasters are ever going to reach what I'm explaining as a 10 of excitement level.
One other way to listen to professionals and to listen to them, you'll be able to hear from Mike Capps here with SHN. If you are an SHN Sports Association member, all you got to do to join is just go to SHNSports.com. You can find out more about the association, and we like to call it level up your broadcasting. I do want to give you a little tip, though, and Mike's going to give more. I don't want to take away from what he has to offer, but I put this together the other night, and this is some of the content that you will get as an SHN Sports Association member. And this is 20 quick tips for calling a baseball game on the radio. Do your homework, research the team, players, game stats, develop a clear and concise play-by-play style, stay neutral. If you're broadcasting a team, it's okay to go a little bit more lopsided, like a 70-30, but for the most part, you want to stay neutral, be descriptive, use vivid language, keep the pace, provide context, work well with your color commentator. Also, stay focused, pace yourself, be aware of time, be prepared for unexpected events. Stay engaged with your audience. Be aware of your body language. All these little things that, you may think, okay, I'm behind the radio. No one can see me. Your body language means a lot. When I do voiceover work, I'm using my hands, even as I'm doing right now. But be aware of your body language. What you're doing with your body says a lot about how it's going to come out in the broadcast. Also, embrace silence. Baseball is one of those sports where things get quiet. You don't have to talk the whole time. Did you hear that? It was silence for a few moments. It's a chance to reset. No problem with that. Practice good microphone technique, learn to use sound effects, stay hydrated, take breaks, and have fun. That's just a little bit, Karl, that I wanted to toss out there just to let folks know that, hey, there's an opportunity for you to get involved. You're going to learn a lot more from Mike Capps. And really excited about this. And this new Broadcast Theory podcast, well, it's going to be in depth, and I guarantee once you're a member of the association, you listen to the tools and the techniques that you're taught here that's updated weekly, you're going to become a better broadcaster.
Yeah, and that's the goal is, don't take everything that we say as the way that you should do it because everybody's a little bit different of a broadcaster, and that's what we want in the association is a community of people trying to help each other improve. And I had a guy who's doing softball for us this weekend for UTSA softball, and he has a very unique style that I think he needs to fine-tune, where when he communicates, he'll kind of keep it level, and then it'll dip a little low, and then it'll dip a little high, or it'll spike a little high, I should say, and then it'll dip back to about normal level in his actual tone of voice and his general cadence of his voice. So what I really kind of stress to him is, it's not bad what you're doing, fine-tune it, because it's your style, but what makes it unique can also sort of hurt you as a broadcaster. So you have to make sure that if you're going to try and have a unique style, which he does, and he does a solid job at it, he's improved throughout the years with his unique style, is to fine-tune it, understand what makes you unique, and then make sure that you're improving on that. Because, Rob, as you say, you are somebody who I think sometimes you do dial it up past 10. You're at an 11 or a 12 sometimes, and that's actually okay, but it's not the best thing to be at an 11 or a 12, I would say, a dozen times during a game. You kind of only want to reserve the really big spikes for the biggest plays, not just like a big play. I'm talking the biggest plays. And, you and I have had conversations about that, and that's something that I think every broadcaster needs to understand. How often are they spiking, as I like to call it? Because it's not necessarily, as I've already kind of said, the most pleasing thing to the majority of viewers when they're having to deal with a broadcaster. Hopefully you're not overmodulating. That's another thing we talk about in SHN Sports production sides of things of the association. But you're essentially raising the level of the broadcast in the viewer's ears. So you have to always be aware of the viewer's ears, or the listener's ears if you're doing radio, because it's very important to consider the audience at all times. And do I really need to get them that excited because I'm that excited? And we're having a lot of fun doing broadcasts. That's the best part of doing sports, is you're watching sports. If you don't like sports, why are you a sports broadcaster? I don't know. But we all enjoy what we do. But sometimes I think we enjoy it so much that we have to realize that we have to tone it down a little bit, because the people at home watching don't need their spikes up to 10 or 11. Keep it where it is appropriate. And that's a whole nother conversation, but more or less in baseball, it can be very inappropriate, as you were saying, to get super excited about a strike. Even if it's one strike towards the final out of the World Series, again, maybe that's an 8. And then the World Series winning call is a 10. But really, at no point, other than usually those instances, is a strike, even if it's an out away of a big win, supposed to go above about a 5.5. So
yeah.
So when I say these 5.5s and 10s, it's more or less like right now, I'd say I'm at about a 2. I'm excited that we're doing the podcast. This is fun. I talk fast. That's just how I am. Although some Northerners say that I talk slow because I guess I come from the South, and a lot of Southerners say I talk fast because they're Southern and they speak slow. So, that's neither here nor there. It's part of what makes me unique, I suppose, being raised by Yankees in Texas. But,
you betcha.
Yeah. But really, it comes down to, I guess, when it is appropriate, and this comes to all sports, not just baseball, when it is appropriate to get very excited, below excited, and then neutral, which I would say is roughly where you want to live in the diamond sports. You really just kind of want to live in the diamond sports. Even if there's a runner on third and it's a fly ball out to right field, a run scores, I'll just give you an example. This is how I would say it. It's like, runner on third, fly ball to deep right. That should be enough for our base runner on third to score. He does. He tags up. He comes in. It's 1-0 Roadrunners. That is how you describe a score. Meanwhile, most other sports sort of rely going above neutral on scores. And, that's like, if you talk about baseball, it's like he drives inside, he lays it up, and it falls through. That's a bit above neutral. And, if he misses a shot, then you stay around neutral. So, you got to monitor your own style as well, but more or less, again, you don't want to be so excited the entire game that it's over the top. And, if you're someone like you, Rob, who runs a bit high motored and high energy, listen to Craig Way. Craig Way's perfected it. He is somebody who even still occasionally goes over the top, but he knows how to tone it back a little. He's mastered that around now. But I think there have been times where he's gone so over the top he's lost his voice. So, I would say if you're someone who's a high energy broadcaster, Kevin Harlan and Craig Way are probably two broadcasters to listen to. Harlan, obviously, you'll see him all over the place, mostly on NBA on TNT. And Craig Way's the voice of the Longhorns, who does some national stuff sometimes too.
Absolutely. We got just a few more minutes here. Again, this is Broadcast Theory can't even talk, Karl. See, I'm so high energy. It's the Broadcast Theory podcast brought to you by SHN Sports. Rob Hipp alongside Karl Schoening here. One other thing, too, that I want to mention, and again, we're going to go in depth with Mike Capps on this, so you've got to be a member of the association. I'm not trying to do this as a gimmick to get you to buy, but look, it is very critical. If you want to elevate your game, learn from the industry professionals, learn from the best, Mike Capps is one of them. We'll have that exclusive content as part of an association membership. I will say this, if you're broadcasting baseball and your team is up by 15 or 20 runs and they hit a home run, don't go over the top. You're already up. It's okay to get a little bit excited, but I was listening to broadcasts over the past few weeks, and I can count on more than two hands how many calls that I've heard where a team is up dramatically and they hit a home run or even a grand slam, and it's just way over the top. Don't overdo it. Some good stuff, Karl. I did want to mention, too, if you need assistance with scoring, we do have resources as part of the SHN Sports Broadcast Academy. This is more paid resources that you will be able to access as a paid member. I've developed my own baseball scorecard that I'm sharing with our association members. Again, go to SHNsports.com. You can sign up to be a member. It's very affordable. It's a monthly fee. You can also pay either quarterly or annually. You get discounts if you pay quarterly or annually. But my scorecard, for me, works. And it's based on the feedback from other people. It's based on what I do and what works for me. And guess what? The cool thing about it is it's constantly evolving as well. The more feedback that I get, the more that I've updated this. But my scorecard works great if it's a 10-inning game. Of course, if you go over, what I do is I put another page to the side of it, make it work. But I like it because I not only have my offense and who the lineups are, but I also have my defensive setup as well. I can tell who's out there on one simple sheet. This has worked wonders for many broadcasters. Also shows the run, hits, errors, left on base, also the opposing pitcher. So you can go back and have some stats there. If you broadcast for college at a Division I level, I know that you have access to these resources right there through the stat program. But again, it's good to have your own score that Karl mentioned earlier. No matter what you do, it's one sport that I highly recommend that you keep your own score. But this works great for many people. You can get a copy of this and print it out yourself as an SHN Sports Association member. Karl?
And if you keep it up, yeah, the most important thing that I think for if you're a fan who's scored baseball a whole lot your whole life, but you're a first-time broadcaster, you might not know what that is up there above the score sheet. That's a defensive chart. And what we really should be emphasizing, I'm surprised we've gotten this far without mentioning it, that defensive chart is very key for broadcasters, because if you're saying there's a ground ball to short and you're looking at the lineups card, you got to figure out on that positions there underneath your score, your score sheet, who's the shortstop. Instead, you look at your defensive chart, you can just glance and see that it's a ground ball to shortstop Smith, let's say is his name, and then he throws over to first, and instead of, again, looking at your lineup card to figure out who's on first and scanning through all 9 batters, you can say, oh, right there, you notice that it is Johnson at first. So, yeah, I think that is something that everybody who is doing broadcasting should do. Keep track of your own score and have a defensive chart, because if you have those two things, then the story of the game is very easy to tell. While if, again, it's a very beginner thing not to do, and you'll find out not to do it. If you're just relying on the PA announcer to tell you who's at the plate every time they come up, and you try and look through a lineup card to see who is on the defensive side of the field, you are going to have an increased difficulty on your broadcast, and it doesn't sound as good. I can tell you that much, because I don't know, maybe early on, luckily for me, my dad, Bill Schoening, as we were talking about, has done broadcasting forever, so probably my very first game was, I would say, more or less when I learned how to score and learned about the defensive chart stuff. But that would be really hard if you did not take the time just to set those things up. So, the big tip there is use a score sheet like ours at the association that has a defensive chart. or just make your own defensive chart if you need something a bit bigger, because some of us need bigger than that, and I understand, because maybe our eyesight isn't too great, or maybe you just need something nice and big that you can edit throughout the game, because if you're doing one of those early scrimmages like our good friend Michael Francis, who does Rouse Baseball, was doing, where they were just rotating players in all the time to get them opportunities on the field, it's going to be hard to keep up with, so you might want something a bit bigger than the, third of the score sheet that we had there. But definitely two things that you would want to have for your broadcast: the defensive chart and the score sheet. So nice of you to put it all in one for most of our Broadcast Association members.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's the feedback. If you need a bigger one, we can create that. We're going to take your feedback and develop tools and resources, not only what we already currently have, but we'll make them in a way that works best for you. Also, that's part of the feedback that we want to take in and help you. When we say level up as a broadcaster, we mean it. What can we do to help you? Karl, been a fun first segment. I know there's a ton more to dig into about calling a baseball game on the radio and on TV. But again, we'll be talking to Mike Capps here a little bit later this week, and we'll be releasing that podcast. It is available to our paid SHN Sports Association members. And by the way, if you're watching this on a desktop and you got your phone next to you, you can just scan the QR code at the top left of your screen to join SHN. Also, it's super easy just to go online and go to shnsports.com. Karl, before we wrap it up, just any final thoughts? Been a fun first segment here on the new Broadcast Theory podcast. Looking forward to bringing these out more often.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast, I highly recommend going to our YouTube page and watching it so you can see some of those visual aids that we were referencing. Again, probably goes back to we're not descriptive enough with visual aids, but we'll have more of these podcasts just to talk about broadcast theory in general: news, TV, sports, on air, behind the scenes. I'm sure there's a lot that we can go into, and I can't wait to get Mike Capps on one of these podcasts so you guys can hear him and his wealth of knowledge. You know, he has all those years at ABC News and CNN, and obviously over 2 decades worth of experience with the Round Rock Express. It's going to be a lot of fun doing these podcasts with you, and obviously keep an eye out for our guests, because we know a lot of people and we'd love to have them involved in the broadcasts as well.
All right, well, let's help you level up your broadcast. Join the SHN Sports Association today. Simply visit shnsports.com. For Karl Schoening, our Director of Broadcasting, I'm Rob Hipp, Director of Operations. We'll see you next time right back here on SHN Sports.